first ever Miss Universe contest, the first alcohol store in Riyadh, and the Silicon Valley investing billions of dollars to build a tech industry in Saudi Arabia. The kingdom is well on its way to big changes. Some have already taken place, some are about to be implemented. The winds of change stem from a modernization effort by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, something that was announced back in 2016, known as Vision 2030. Saudi Arabia is racing to diversify its oil-rich economy in areas like tech, tourism, culture and sports, even investing a reported $200 million a year for soccer superstar Cristiano Ronaldo and planning a 100-mile-long mirrored skyscraper in the desert. Now, if the Crown Prince succeeds in his Vision 2030, he will have placed Saudi Arabia ahead of what it has been for decades, and amidst the rising global competition like China, United States, and countries like France. Over the past 7 years, MBS has subtly tried the transformation of the kingdom, from lifting the ban of women drivers and allowing them in military, to opening up movie theaters and reducing the power of ulema in state and societal affairs. Saudi Arabia's transformation has been at an economic, religious, and social level. Saudi Arabia has a long way to go, but every reform is one step to further its growth and strengthen its economy. To talk more on this, I'm joined on the broadcast by former Ambassador Mr. Suresh Goel. Mr. Suresh Goel, good evening. Namaskar, sir. Thank you very much for joining us at Mirror Now. How do you see this transformation, Mr. Goel, happening, in Saudi Arabia? Mohammed bin Salman has been pretty vocal about his Vision 2030, about the kind of changes that he wants to bring into Saudi Arabia. But how do you see this transformation affecting not just Saudi Arabia, but the entire West Asian region?
Very transformative, I would say, Shreya, because so far, the Middle Eastern region, I mean, if you look at the history, over the last maybe around 2 or 3 decades, it has been basically the oil-rich economy, but very conservative, very in with the Wahhabi kind of a philosophy that pervades the Middle East. After Mohammed bin Salman came, we find an effort to change the way the Saudi Arabian thinks, the way they behave, and come more into alignment with the Western kind of a cultural innuendo, the Western kind of a thinking. So clearly, what we see happening now is 2 things. Number one, modernization of Saudi economy, reducing dependence on the oil primarily. But I think more than that, an effort for the Saudi and the Middle Eastern society to come into alignment with the Western culture, the Western liberal thought. And I think that is basically because the Saudi Arabia sees that in case they want to be the predominant power in that area, one, they need to basically be seen as different from Iran, which has been seen as very conservative, hijab, etc. Number one. Number two, they also want to be seen as a country which can play an important role in connectivity with Europe. And that is where you see the MEC coming through. That is where you see the economic connectivity coming through. So there's a lot of different thinking that Mohammed bin Salman has come. And I think the important point really here is to kind of bring about an integration and a kind of a resonance between the Saudi society and the Western society, which they now think are important for development of the area.
So Ambassador Goel, then can we say that it's largely an economic reason that Saudi Arabia is, looking at? It's due to that, strengthening their economy, strengthening their regional power, and therefore all of these changes, instead of actually bringing about a change because, they do feel that this is now needed to move ahead in society, in the world?
Sorry, I lost you there. Hello.
Are you able to hear me, Ambassador Goel, now?
Yes, yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah, so Ambassador Goel, I was trying to understand from you
Hello.
then largely the economics is behind this transformation, is
Yes.
it?
It's both. I would say it's both economic and strategic. Economic in the sense that because Saudi Arabia does realize, as well as the United Arab Emirates, that the days when they could actually depend upon oil revenues for their own growth are going to be over pretty soon, and they need to diversify. But strategic and political basically because the way the forces are now panning out in the Middle East, and in that equation, you have both Israel, you have Iran, you have also basically now basically Iran and Israel really. And if you look at all these things coming into the equation, Saudi Arabia does realize that for to remain politically important, it has to choose which side should it go to, and obviously uh, strategically speaking, it finds better to be on the American and the Western side rather than the Iranian side. So it's both, but economic and strategic.
And do you think, Ambassador Goel, it will be able to do it smoothly and successfully without facing any resistance from fellow West Asian neighbors and Islamic countries?
Now, that's a difficult question to really answer because from what I understand, there are still pockets of conservative Wahhabism and very predominant, very prominent within even the palace in Saudi Arabia, and therefore Mohammed bin Salman is going to face quite a bit of a resistance from within Saudi Arabia for this transformation. But from other countries in Middle East, that's a bit difficult to say really. Frankly, if we look at the way it is panning out there, United Arab Emirates is already beside Saudi Arabia. They all have very, very interesting and very effective intelligence cooperation with the countries in the West. So the only country which basically still is really on the other side, and that too I think marginally, is Qatar really. So therefore, I don't think that they would be facing a great deal of problem within the region, but maybe from within the country that there could be some pockets of resistance, but not too strong. And I think they will be able to overcome given their own style of governance and administration. I don't think that will create too much of a difficulty for them, and they should be able to overcome that quite easily, I would say.
Okay, my last question to you then, Ambassador Goel, of course, it's a
Yes.
domestic issue and a domestic change that's happening for Saudi Arabia. But how should India be looking at it? India and Saudi Arabia share a fairly healthy relationship. The Prime Minister has reached out to Saudi Arabia as well. In fact, the entire West Asian region. But how should we be looking at it, if at all we should be, being like strongly impacted by it?
Yes. Uh, Economically, I think we are well on the way. We have good energy cooperation with Saudi Arabia. We have a huge Indian community working within Saudi Arabia, and I think they are playing a very active role in building the relationship. I think basically the one area where we need to be very, very calculative, should I say, and I should say really in terms of uh, calculative, careful. I really can't think of any other adjective really in that sense. But I think we need to look at the equations or the triangle between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and South Asia. And basically, I would Central Asia, really speaking, because Iran is important to India both for the energy security as well as connectivity to Central Asia. Please do remember Chabahar, which is so important to us. Saudi Arabia is important to us both for the energy security as well as economic cooperation, and also as a connectivity issue with Europe. So we have to basically weigh between the two.
Right.
But I would say that it's a good thing that we are developing that kind of cooperation with Saudi Arabia. Yes.
All right. Ambassador Goel, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your perspective.